We've coined the phrase hashtag trust the algorithm, because Adam does not hashtag trust the algorithm.
It does feel very stand on the top of a building, throw a load of flyers off and see who picks it up.
Yeah, this is the magic of the algorithm, you see. The algorithm becomes the wind in that situation.
Myself, at the age of 35, I represent the boomers and the dinosaurs. It raises questions for me and concerns because I don't necessarily trust the robots just yet. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Have You Heard podcast. I'm super excited this week to be joined by Joey.
Hello, everyone. I'm back.
You are back. Yes,
back.
First podcast together as well.
It is our first podcast together, which is very exciting.
I think so, yeah, very exciting. So we're gathered here today to talk...
We're getting married, are we?
Yes. A little bit. We have gathered here today to talk about algorithms.
Yes.
We have an ongoing debate, primarily because I think in agency world, for myself at the age of 35, I represent sort of the boomers and the dinosaurs in terms of age and where my experience of paid media and, you know, social Facebook and Meta and all that kind of stuff has come from. And it's very much evolved massively now to sort of an algorithm focused approach to a lot of performance and more so now, or say leading more towards paid brand stuff as well. So it raises questions for me and concerns because I don't necessarily trust the robots just yet.
We've had many debates about this already, and we've coined the phrase hashtag trust the algorithm, because Adam does not hashtag trust the algorithm.
I do not at all. I do a little bit, but I think maybe a discussion, maybe a bit of a debate here. But before we dive into why I don't trust the algorithms, DABAs ASC, maybe a bit of an overview for people who may not know or dabbling into it, just to give a bit of context.
Into it. That's what you did there.
I did, not on purpose. Of what they mean and why, you know, how we use them and why then therefore we're going to have this conversation.
So I think, I mean, we've obviously spoken about this on the podcast a lot before. The industry has moved very much more into an algorithmic led management style of ads, both across PPC and paid social. Obviously with PPC, we've got Performance Max, which was really the first big jump into fully automated campaigns. And then on the Meta side of things, we've got dynamic ads for broad audiences, or DABAs, which was shortening through to, and Advantage Plus shopping campaigns, which was shortening to ASC. So both of those campaign types are fully led by the algorithm in terms of their targeting. Slightly different in the way that they utilize their targeting, but on the whole, you're not overlaying any audiences on there at all. You're just kind of letting the robots do their thing and bringing in the results, essentially. So DABAs, the way that they work is they read your product feed. So it's a fully product feed based product. And essentially any similar products that you've been looking at on your web browser. So it's really effective because it's targeting users that are already in market for a specific type of product. And then it shows users that specific type of product from your product feed. And we've seen massive amounts of growth from utilizing those campaigns. So that's very product led, very product feed led. We've then got Advantage Plus shopping campaigns, which is almost taking that to another layer, where we're introducing our static, our video creative, our carousel creative, alongside all of our catalog creative as well. And essentially what Meta are doing here is reading all of the content within your ad copy. They're reading all of the content and messaging within your ad itself. So whether there's any text within your single image ad, whether there's any kind of content that it can read from or messaging that it can read from your video ads. It then also crawls your landing page website as well to find out what the kind of themes are in terms of the target audience it's going after. And then we'll go and target people off the back of that. It's very clever.
Yes.
Very clever. And we've seen, again, massive amounts of growth from utilizing the algorithmic based campaigns. And we've been testing them against kind of our old style, which on the grand scheme of things is not even that old anymore, in the sense of our top and middle of the funnel and bottom of the funnel targeting that we used to do, where we used to overlay specific audiences and use customer profiles and all of that to be able to target specific pools of users. But ASC and DABAs just completely outperform everything. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose my the understanding, it makes sense what it's doing and where it's pulling. I mean, it's quite scary where it's pulling from if you think about it. And, you know, being in the market for a fleece feels like a very boomer thing for me to do. But I think one of the things, I suppose, and the conversations I've always had is maybe that step back in terms of how it starts is obviously the performance gets to a point because it learns and algorithms and things like that. But it does feel like my concern is if we know who our target audience potentially is outside of understanding that there may be different people in there, it does feel very stand on the top of a building, throw a load of flyers off and see who picks it up.
Yeah.
As opposed to standing on the corner of the building over, you know, an audience of people I know are interested in my product and dropping leaflets off there. For me, when I look at that strategically, in my mind, I'm going, well, yes, people are walking past. There might be more people that walk past on one side of the building that pick up that leaflet, could pick up that leaflet, I should say. But if I'm throwing it to an audience of 200 people I know love my products, it feels like I'm going to get a better return and reward because I know those people and I know that my creative, my products and everything is...
This is the magic of the algorithm, you see. The algorithm becomes the wind in that situation and magically blows the flyers in the direction of people that are probably interested in it. There is obviously an element of learning involved in that, like you touched on. But I think we've come to a point now where Meta has so much data behind it that it can already act pretty quickly in terms of understanding the audience pools to go after. I think we're obviously still, as we work with these automated campaigns, we're still trying to understand how they work exactly, because we're still doing a lot of testing around, particularly, for example, best practice is to run realistically one Advantage Plus shopping campaign per territory that you're running activity in. Now, for a fashion brand, for example, everyone that's in that same audience pool is probably going to be, if they're in market for a fleece, they're probably in market for a t-shirt. They'll probably pick up a pair of jeans as well while they're there. However, with other brands that we work with that are retailers, for example, that actually have products from lots of different product areas, we're actually seeing benefit of splitting out those ASC campaigns because actually the target audience for each of those is slightly different and you want to be able to push the algorithm in a specific direction rather than kind of bunging everything all in together and then it getting a little bit confused. So there's still learnings for us to take around how we best utilize that algorithm and understand what's the best way for us to push it in a direction that we want it to be able to go. There's still an element of control that we can have over it to be able to kind of dictate where we want it to target, essentially.
Because I think that's like part of it as well for me, which is, you know, strategically a brand has potentially an audience that it's going after, even if it's really broad and like you just touched on there, it could be specific products that we know, right, these are facilitated for, but you know, even if you pick it from like a gender perspective, this is a ladies running jacket. For me, if you're putting that into a bucket straight up of just everyone, I'm like, what wait a minute, you know, this is, there's 50%, you know, let's say of that audience right from the beginning who are not interested. And then, so we're now having to do 2 or 3 days of learning before the algorithm understands that is for that. The overlay as well on that as well is, you know, strategically, when you understand your audience and you've got your audience insights, there's so much value in taking that and then looking at, okay, how do we build the creative off the back of this? And so I might then go, well, if I know this is my audience, and then I've gone and created a specific ad, you know, for that campaign, which is relevant to the audience. It features a product, it takes a load of their interests and all of that kind of stuff. And I put that in. Again, I'm adding layers which are going, well, it's completely irrelevant for that audience, but I'm still just throwing it into a pool of go and have a go and see, which then feels to me like really kind of a bit of a slap in the face almost from the algorithm and the robots going, don't worry about your work and your behaviors and the psychology behind it. Just, it doesn't matter.
It just knows.
Yeah, but that's where I feel like there's potential where I'm looking at it going, surely there's...
But I mean, that's the element, and that's why the way, we're changing the way that we're working at the moment, because, previously from, the way that we used to plan out campaigns, it was very audience focused around what audiences would you target in the platforms themselves, and then correlate that to the creative and messaging that you're running right now. Because kind of the algorithm does that for you, the focus then comes onto just doing the audience targeting piece, but to build the creative for that audience.
Yeah, fun.
So you're then sending it out, and it's crazy how good it is at doing it. We run ASC campaigns for fashion brands, and you can't dictate which gender it's going out to, but actually just pulling it all up together and putting a mix of different creatives in. Yeah, you're going to get a bit of wastage in there. Like, naturally you will do. You're not going to completely eradicate that. But the benefit gain from the additional performance that you get by it being able to target pockets of people that you might not have necessarily thought of when you're doing all of your manual targeting completely outweighs that kind of potential little bit of wastage that you're going to get.
Yep.
And I think it's just the way that we have to think and change the way that we're thinking going forward. Now, naturally, that's still only going to work realistically from a performance standpoint, because that's the way the algorithms are built at the moment, is around how do you get people to convert. That's what they're there to do. It changes a little bit, and this is the discussion that we've had, is when you kind of move slightly further up the funnel, you're looking more on a brand side of things, how audience then plays a massive factor on that side of things, because then you have to go kind of back to the kind of traditional ways of targeting and understanding who your target audience is, because you're casting the net so wide at that stage. You want to be able to reach the pools of people that you want to then drive further down and engage with the kind of conversions and performance-based activity that you've got.
So then top really of funnel still exists in a way of, okay, I've got a bit of understanding, but actually I think there's such value in what you said, is obviously, that initial stage, strategically thinking and building these audiences. What it allows you to do from an algorithmic perspective is actually gain additional learnings of, okay, this might be an audience I didn't think about, but for some reason they're in there. Yeah. I suppose that on the flip side, there's so much value in that, right? Like from a brand perspective, especially if I'm launching a new brand or product, it could be quite interesting, and go, but if I've also spent so much time building a brand or product for a specific person, and then the algorithm, because one or two people from a different group are interested in the product, and it leans and steers it more that way, okay, I've learned a lot, and I've realized my products are someone, but it also feels a bit like, I've wasted potentially a load of time.
But it's a good point, because people do build, products and services around a target audience that they go after. Yeah. But so many times in the past have we been approached by brands and said, this is our target audience, go and target them. Yeah. And then the algorithm will just completely sway. And the people that are actually buying into the products or services are a completely different audience. Yeah. And then actually you don't want to change away from that, because that's because that's actually the people that are buying your products and services. So then you have to change your strategy to try and move towards that audience. And they've actually found out that they've had to change their strategy through the running of paid media activity to understand who their target audience is, because the algorithm's actually dictating that better than what they initially thought their audience was in the first place. So it's an interesting development in the industry.
I suppose then the balancing act of that though then is from a brand perspective, you're left with sort of two avenues. One is, I've got a different audience. Yeah. What a waste of my life building this brand and product. It's for someone completely different, or everything I knew. Do I stick on that journey now? And, actually it could inform your brand massively outside of just performance. Or you move back up the funnel and go, actually, we've got a strategic job to do here, which is we've realized we're not communicating with our audience correctly. And this is and then therefore actually you go back to the top, and then it's a full, okay, how do we do this now? How do we use social or brand or whatever to actually speak to and communicate? So it's got the two balances.
Yeah, of course.
It maybe still in some ways goes back to, though, for me, where the questions would always be is if your strategy and stuff has gone right, you're still leaving it to an algorithm to go, oh, well, they just seem more interested at that time or whatever. So therefore it does sway, rather than working an audience that you want to target really hard because it's just naturally splitting. But I suppose that's all about brand growth and learning and opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, brand's the bit that you've got the most amount of influence on, certainly from like a paid media and targeting perspective, because you still need to have that overlaid. But even now, the performance algorithm's very good. I mean, I'm sure of it. They're going to be developing an algorithm that's going to push further, be more effective when you push further up the funnel. And we're even now still in a stage now where we're talking to the likes of, Meta and Google, and, open targeting is becoming so much more of a thing. And even at brand level, open targeting is worth testing and letting the algorithm dictate who at brand level you're going to go out and target as well. And actually finding that it's becoming really effective from that standpoint as well. So I think it's just going to be further developments in the industry, and the insight piece that you've traditionally been able to gather around your audience targeting and your profiling is going to be more difficult to gather, because it's just going to be dictated by the algorithm, and it's finding ways. And again, it comes back down to the piece finding ways of like how we develop as an agency and how we kind of keep up with the times to make sure that we're still delivering value to clients, because that strategy and insight piece becomes so much more important when, the front end piece in terms of, I guess, targeting, planning and the building and all of that kind of stuff goes much further down in terms of kind of the percentage of time that we're spending on that. So, it's crazy. But Adam, you got to hashtag trust the algorithm.
I mean, it's growing. But I think, like I say, from an old school strategy planning perspective, there are so many values in it, which I do understand, because actually I can learn what I'm doing in real time. Like, because again, that old school way of building audiences, of course you're going to get results from it to an extent, maybe not the best results, but you're not really understanding. It was harder maybe to understand why it didn't work if it's not, and you're looking at it and going, oh, that was okay. Like you don't really change anything. Whereas in this case, even if it's top, middle or bottom of funnel, straight away, strategically, creatively and everything, I can learn very quickly, okay, something's not clicking. So, because I've gone in with this audience that I want to target, which evidently I still can. Yeah. And really, if I've done my job properly, it should optimize towards them anyway and potentially pull in a few extras, rather than if it's deviating completely, there's something's gone wrong somewhere, and then therefore I can review, rather, that old school, back in the day, it might have taken you 3-4, weeks, if not 2 or 3 months to actually get that information, where we can gather it within a few weeks and actually make decisions off the back of it. So I do see the values that way. It just feels like the complexity, or that throwing everything in there and just letting it do what it does is what makes me nervous, because it could tell me anything.
It's the unknown. It's a black box, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people do feel nervous. It's when PMax first came out, like nobody wanted to move across to it because it was the first step into fully black box campaigns. But now every Google Ads account's got to have one in it.
Well, there you go.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. Let us know in the comments if you do hashtag trust the algorithm. But make sure you like, subscribe, whatever platform you're listening on. Thanks again. And we'll see you soon. Take care.